Hey.
This is sort of like a test thing I'm just doing right now. Of course, I'm doing it with
Mhm.
my good friend Fiona Mackinnon. You might know her as
Hi.
Ceranics on the Twitters, or if you've ever played a game with her. Of course, she's done so many things in the Kind of Funny community, in the Kind of Funny Facebook group,
Mhm.
6-1 Indie stuff. Like so many wonderful things for the community that I felt that I'm happy that she actually reached out when I put the word out to do this sort of like test slash maybe the first episode. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe it's a bonus thing. We'll find out.
Maybe.
But at the same time, I want to again thank you so much for just sort of walking into this weird little project that I'm doing. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Like I was telling you, I was just watching Blue Exorcist, which is an anime for people who don't know. So just thought, you know what? May as well just say, because you've posted who's up. And I'm like, hi. I am. Why not? So was I expecting this? Probably not.
No.
But here we are.
It's like, well, that's good. I figured if I just type in, who's up, they're like at least ready for a conversation. So, thank you for being the one of the few people that I saw right away. So, a shout out to
You're
everybody else that
welcome.
said hello, and I'm not meaning to ignore you right now. I very much will probably talk to you later on this fine new show.
Mm.
Of course, the show I'm calling it Point in Conversation, which is an offshoot of our other brand that we have, which of course is Point in Progress, which I'm excited for when that launches. I'm recording this pre-launch. Well, who knows? We'll find out.
I was about to say, I'm like, wait a second, you're mentioning this? I'm like, wait a sec, you're probably releasing this
This
after.
is way
So,
later,
cool.
yeah. So
Whoo!
I'm doing so. The whole intention of the show is very much yes, it's going to be conversational, but I'm
Yeah.
very much in the idea of seasonal stuff where I don't have to do
Oh,
this
yeah.
52 episodes a year. I could just do this as, hey, I'm going to do maybe 6 or 12, like a season's
Yeah.
worth, and then I'm going to pause, and then I'll introduce the next, and I'll record a bunch, save for the next wave of people. So that will hopefully
Yeah,
obviously be
absolutely.
the format that we decide for this. But of course, the reason that we're here is because Fee. Hey, how's it going? Fee, can
I'm
you
doing good.
tell me a little bit about your life growing up? Because a lot of the stuff that we're involved with is in video games, and as much as I love video games, we could talk about video games. That is not something I'm dissuading from here. But I want to know about you
Mhm.
personally. What can you tell me? What? Give me your sort of your pitch, your childhood pitch.
Okay, well, I'm a Canadian. Shocker
Oh
for
yeah, that's right.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Canadian. I wasn't born in my province. I know I constantly talk about Nova Scotia. I was actually born in Ottawa, Ontario, which is the capital of Canada. And then we moved to Nova Scotia. I lived with my grandparents, my mom, and my sister. So I grew up with my two grandparents, mostly because my mom worked in politics at the time. And
Okay.
then so she spent the majority of the week away. And I would just stay with my grandparents and my sister, who is my sister. You've met her. Her name's Emily.
Yes.
She and I are the same age for 5 days because we're considered Irish twins. So we
Interesting.
have her birth. Oh, yeah, absolutely bonkers. So she's born on July 14th. I was born on July 19th. So for 5 days of my year, it is absolute chaos because the second that it turns 12 a.m. on the 14th here, not even in her province, but where I am, she's like, we're the same age. I'm like, what the like, even though we live, like, she lives in Alberta, which for people who are in the United States or anywhere else who do not know the comparison, it's like the difference between Montana and New York. Like,
Okay.
there's that much space between us, and she still does stuff like this all the time. All the time. So it's bonkers. But yeah, I grew up doing that. I was a artsy nerd. People thought I assumed I played sports because I'm 6'2". I've been 6'2" since I was 12.
Yeah, people say the same thing about me about like, oh, you're big, so you do sports, right? And I'm like, no, I'm
Yeah.
I'm just 6 feet and round. That doesn't mean I need to like everything that's a sports ball.
Yeah, no, people were like, you can play basketball. And then I was instantly put on the basketball team in school. And like, this is a bad idea. Mostly not just because I'm bad at basketball, but people didn't take it too well that I just instantly got on the basketball team without trying out. They're just like, oh, you're tall, you'll be fine. And I'm like, mm-mm. That didn't last very long. But for the most part, pretty nerdy, pretty quiet. I've been a huge like nerd since I was a kid. I think like I started off with Pokemon and um, Kiki's Delivery Service when I was 6,
Really?
and just a bunch of Disney, Studio Ghibli, and then I grew up with a bunch of anime. But obviously, since I grew up in the early 2000s and then into late 2000s, I was a closeted anime nerd
Hmm.
because I lived in a small town in Nova Scotia, Canada, talking about like, hey, I really like anime and like Asian culture, and I also like cultures like a bunch of different cultures, but for the most part, I was watching like Inuyasha, Naruto, and Bleach, and then a bunch of stuff like that. But also a huge history buff. I love mythology as well. I read a bunch of books about that. Obviously, a huge Harry Potter nerd, but as we all know, FJK Rowling.
You can curse on this show. It's fine.
Okay, cool. Fuck JK Rowling. And yeah, so for the most part, I lived in a quiet town called Royal Granville Ferry. It is one of the oldest English/French settlements in Canada and in North America. And yeah, that's pretty much how I was. I was a little kid running around playing imaginary like things with my friends, running around acting as though we were wizards. I'm a huge crazy person.
So the beginning of your love with the anime, how did you get involved with that specifically? Was it someone that showed you something? Was it just a cartoon that played? Like, how did you, like, for instance, Kiki Delivery Service? I mean, I'm assuming that's roughly what, in the 90s you would have to catch it on cable. It's not something you can just stream because it wasn't around when we were
Oh,
kids. So
yeah.
who was your influencer? How did you get influenced in that?
Actually, I think it was my mom was
Really?
the big city here is Halifax, and she worked in Halifax, and one of her coworkers gave her just a bunch of different movies. Like there was Hercules, I think there was Hercules and a bunch of other like Disney films, but one of them was Kiki's Delivery Service, and my mom put it in the VCR, and that was not allowed to leave the VCR until it broke. I just watched it consistently. I was super obsessed with it, and I just loved everything from like the animation to the story to just the art in general was absolutely fabulous. Like Studio Ghibli and Hayao Miyazaki is probably like one of my biggest inspirations. Even though he's kind of a jerk, and by a jerk I mean like he's just very much this is how things should be, and people quote him because he says that anime shouldn't exist. Like he thinks anime is terrible, mostly because of some other anime content,
Sure.
which like sometimes, you know what, guys, some of the anime is really bonkers, but he uses it to do storytelling, and I watched that, and then I made some new friends when I went to school that also were kind of into it. Like at that point, that was when like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh
Yeah.
and all these other influences were coming to TV. Also, Sailor Moon, Card Capture Sakura. I didn't get to watch too much because it was on a channel that I personally didn't have at home, but I could watch it when I was over at a friend's house. But it was a lot of that, and then a friend of mine had a bunch of Studio Ghibli films like Nausicaa, Valley of the Wind, Spirited Away, and just a bunch of these other films, and I'm like absolutely obsessed. Like fairy tales and stuff like that have always been a huge like part of my life because I lived in a small town where like honestly there was reenactments. My family like a few of my family members are reenactors. They were at the time. So it was very much honestly it's almost like a CW like town, gonna be
Sure.
honest.
Where they had probably
So
filmed in.
yeah, they've done like some filming there also. It's just a lot of all the CW shows are also recorded in BC, not in Nova Scotia, but there's always been like some whimsy, and that's what I've always been kind of fond about. So it just kind of drew me in at that point, and then I learned about things like Inuyasha, like oh my, trying to explain to my mom when I was a kid, I was allowed to watch certain things if I was able to explain the educational like relevance of it. If it was like a cartoon that she didn't seem think that it was appropriate,
Hmm.
I explained that Inuyasha.
Oh boy.
Oh man, I explained that it showed different like storytelling and like historical like things from Japan, and I was slowly able to watch it. But I digress. It was weird. I was a super weird kid. But yeah, it was one of just something I've always been interested in. Animation I was really into as well. And it was something that always just kind of intrigued me because it was a different way to kind of tell these stories that you'd always be told like you have to read a book or there's like the Western influences, but then being able to see like there's places beyond that and then having the ability to see like different representation and different like people's views was really interesting to me. Which I think also kind of like, I'm not saying anime specifically did this, but I've always been one and I've always been taught to kind of like keep an open mind. So being able to do that and be interested in something without any sort of judgment was really nice. Unfortunately, later on in life, I met people who were very judgmental of that. But when I was younger, I was like, my family was very much like, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody and it doesn't include a major amount of violence, like it's fine.
Years later,
Yeah.
cut to you watching Attack on Titan on a podcast.
Yeah. I mean, okay. I wasn't even allowed watching the Power Rangers to a point that my mom
Wow.
found out when I was at a oh my gosh, I was at a sleepover when I was 5 years old, and my friend's mom rented the Power Rangers movie.
Oh,
My
wow.
mom called her, found out about it, told her I wasn't allowed watching it, and so her mom had to go drive out to the movie place, exchange it for Land Before Time because that's not as violent, and then we watched that instead. That was my last sleepover with that girl. And
Wow.
yeah.
So what is your relationship with your mother, if you don't mind me asking? I know that you said that she was a politician.
Oh,
I know, yeah. See,
mm-hmm.
again, I'm going deep. If I'm asking you these personal
May as
questions,
well.
you just tell me to stop. I'll cut it out of the video. It's totally fine.
Absolutely.
But yeah, what is your relationship? So I know you say your mother obviously was a politician. She did a lot of her work during the week, and you spent time with your grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
What was sort of that with the dynamic between you and her, and then obviously the fact that she still found time to police the things you watch.
So my mom like her job actually wasn't like she worked in politics. She wasn't a politician herself, but she
Sure.
worked for political figures. She actually in the late 80s, early 90s, she actually worked for Rooney, who was the Prime Minister of Canada, and that's why I was born in Ottawa because she worked in Ottawa. So she originally worked there, and then we moved to Nova Scotia, and she worked for different people in the Conservative Party at the time. I want to be very clear now, I'm not a conservative myself, and nor is my family. But at the time it was different for that particular, that's a whole other story, like that's a whole other thing.
Let's talk about maybe conservatives and then and now are very deemingly different. So I also want to put that out there. So
yeah, it's very different.
Granted, I just want to make sure. So, but yeah, don't have hesitance of obviously saying like, oh, my mom's conservative. It's fine.
Oh no. Yeah, it was different at the time. But my mom worked for them, and then when I was actually, I think like 5 or 6, she ended up switching jobs to another role, with another person who was trying to run for, my gosh, as an MLA, which is essentially representative of Nova Scotia. And then she proceeded to start working at the Health Authority of Nova Scotia. It was my relationship with my mother is interesting, mostly because, and she and I have talked about this since I've grown up, it was very much, she loved me, she appreciated me. Was I planned? 1000% no. And it's one of those things where I have a younger sister who we are almost the same age, but my sister was always into sports and always going out to different events. But I also grew up with my grandparents. And my grandparents, like, were essentially my parental figures, and my mom was there. I know her as my mother, but she recognizes the fact that there was a lot of times where I was left with my grandparents to keep an eye on them and take care of them when she was away. Because my sister would have like a volleyball event in Cape Breton. So they would drive up there for the weekend for 4 days. And when I, like, back in 2005, my grandmother passed away. So from 2005 to 2009, I was there with my grandfather because my grandfather wasn't doing well between those years. So there was times when I was going to be joining sports. For example, I almost joined the rugby team, but I didn't end up doing that. One, because I almost got a concussion, but two, it's because it would have conflicted with my sister's schedule as well.
Sure, sure.
And so I think that also put me in a kind of role where I would stay home, play video games, and be able to consume this content because I could do that and I wouldn't feel almost like guilty about maybe going out with friends on the weekend because my, like, if I leave, who's going to be there for my grandfather?
Sure.
So it was very much like I watched this very strong figure when I was a child to him getting sick and then him passing away in 2009, that it was, my relationship with my mother is very strained. We would get into a lot of arguments because we are, even though I'm very, like, as you know, I'm a very funny person, but sometimes I do get a little bit like feisty. But she and oh, poor Mario. We would just get, we can, like, we were essentially like water and oil. Like,
Sure.
we would just constantly come at each other. It's gotten better since I've gotten older. And we have had conversations about it where she recognizes that there were times where I was left at home to take care of my grandparents and didn't have as many, like, I still had opportunities by all means. Like, I did a bunch of art stuff. That's a whole other thing. I grew up doing art for like years and I still do it now. And so I spent a lot of focus on that than doing like sports stuff. Also, I got sick a lot as a kid. That's a whole other thing. So yeah, it was kind of like back and forth. We got into a lot of arguments, and I think we said a lot of things when I was younger, even though I never went out drinking, I never did drugs or anything like that, but we still fought a lot. So yeah, it's we're good now. We're good now.
No, that's good, and a lot of things that you said. It's funny because there's a lot of things that we connect with, and it's either if people obviously pushing sports on us, which is one thing. That's something that has happened in my past. The other thing, obviously, is we have a very similar thing with our mothers, especially with the grandparents, where. Yeah, 100%. I would say I don't think I was also a planned person to be on this planet, but at the same time, my mom did her best to obviously go to work, very long hours at a hospital is where she used to work. And during that time, I would be mostly with my grandmother and my grandfather. My grandfather would be working, I'd be with my grandmother primarily.
Yeah.
And yeah, just having that relationship for nearly 11 years before she inevitably passed due to lung cancer. But yeah,
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, absolutely. Trust me, it's been a while. It was during Christmas. Do you want to make it sadder? No, I'm just kidding. But anyways,
no, I understand. My grandfather passed away. Yeah, my grandfather passed away December 20th, 2009. So I understand.
Yes.
Christmas is a rough time of year, my friend.
It sucks. And it's funny because just this Christmas specifically, just because I feel like I'm trapped in the house so much, when I thought about that time period, and I realized that, like, it's been so long. She died in like 2002, I want to say. So well over almost 10 years plus. And so I'm starting to lose the edges of her face in my mind, and it sucks, and I hate thinking about that. In terms of obviously, with your relationship with your mother and your grandparents, I mean, what is your relationship with your sister? I know that I get primarily the fun part, which is when we all play video games together, play Among Us, and you guys are killing each other constantly. I mean, yeah. So since you guys are so close in age, so I know it also sounds like two very distinctively different people for the most part. How was that relationship to be?
150%. Yeah. When I will have to show you a photo of us because we used to, like, honestly, like, the Irish twins was no joke. We used to look identical. Like, I used to have platinum blonde hair. She used to have platinum blonde hair. And but the only difference is I have brown eyes and she has blue eyes. And then my hair turned brown and her hair continued to stay blonde.
Interesting.
And she was the sporty girl, like she was a popular girl. She was always like doing events and stuff like that. And I was the quiet artsy person who like was into like mythology and history and stuff like that. And she was very much into like, I'm sports and I'm pretty and I get boys. So oh, if she listens to this, she's gonna fucking kill me. But she like she was always very competitive, and she still is to this day. I am competitive as well, but I typically don't try to show that side of me until we get into Among Us, and then I get competitive, or in board games.
No,
But
100%.
she and I would always fight. And there was a particular point in high school where we couldn't stand each other. Like we lived in very close proximity. Like we were literally like our rooms were connected. Like there was a wall between us, but we were like always near each other. But she would oh God, the trend. So shocker, I'm a girl, like almost a tomboy girl in high school who plays video games and is a huge like anime history nerd. So I spend majority of my time hanging out with guys because I was a dude. Like I was the guy, like the girl who hung out with guys, but didn't date anybody. Just want to put that out there. Did
No,
not
for sure.
date anyone.
No, that legit happened in the early 2000s. If people don't want to believe it.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I'm saying that now because the amount of times that I had to deal with girls being like, "You always hang out with my boyfriend." I'm like, "Yeah, it's unfortunate. Like, you should probably hang out with him more."
Yeah, he's my DM. So what?
Yeah, like whatever. He's my GM in my World of Warcraft guild. Calm the fuck down. Um, so we would like always hang out, and then my sister and her friends would come and hang out with us every so often. Like I remember one time specifically, I was so pissed. We went to go see Pirates of the Caribbean, and my guy friends were flirting with my sister and her friends, and they're all close ages, so it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was of age. It was okay. And I got so mad that I moved to the other side of the theater and I'm like, don't bother me because they were constantly talking throughout the movie. And so there was just times where she would like start dating my guy friends and then I'm like, I need new guy friends because this is absurd. And then I have to hear these guys like talking about my sister and I'm like, oh, kill me.
God.
And then what was even worse was when one of my guy friends decided to dump my sister and then tell me first that he was going to dump my sister. And I'm like, dude, you can't do this. So it was a really rough time. My sister, like, oh God, Emily, she was always competitive and she was always very vocal about it. And so we would kind of clash. But she was there when she was like when I needed her to be. And there was one particular point where I won an art competition. Whoa. And my sister was there. And I remember we were walking to our mom's car and she's like, why are these other people coming in their other cars? I'm like, oh, well, like the event, like they invited everyone to this like prize thing and there's going to be a lunch and everyone was invited even if you participated. And she's like, they should go home and learn how to draw and deal with it. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, don't say that too loud. And so she and I we're good now because we live in different provinces and we don't deal with each other consistently, but we cannot stay in the same housing for more than like a day and a half or we will start killing each other.
Do you like
we're very different.
Do you text and call each other all the time?
Yeah.
Are you that kind of family? Okay. Someone called me out the other day. I was like, you don't talk to your sister ever. And I'm like, you're right. I don't. We just don't have that relationship. But,
we didn't for a while.
Yeah.
Like, I think we would go like months without talking to each other. But recently, with us being in the Discord and her joining us for games, that we've been playing a lot of games recently together, which is kind of weird because she used to make fun of me playing video games. Like, she would take my headset when I was playing WoW and told all the people in the guild that they had no lives, needed to get over themselves, and get a girl because obviously they're not getting any sex. And I'm like, Emily, for the love of Christ, give me my headphones. You're not allowed to say any of this. And so she would just constantly badger people and make fun of people for playing video games. But now, joke's on her, she plays video games. So
Yeah,
just
I know, right? Super casual here playing Among Us. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Speaking
But
of
no.
that, you kind of brought up an interesting point. So obviously, growing up as a nerdy person, and me too. I mean, I remember growing up very early on, like in love with cartoons, and that was, I guess it is anime. I mean, I was into Dragon Ball Z,
Hmm.
and Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon, and those were my
Hmm.
main things. I never got into
Yeah,
Sailor Moons. I never got into anything else,
that's fair.
but comic books and movies specifically is still my most favorite cherished thing. But when did it come to the point when you're like, I was getting bullied for liking these things or being made fun of these things, and then it just became
Hmm.
pop culture. It just became like, when did that period happen to you? Do you have a story where you're like, what do you mean everybody likes this? Like, cause
Oh God,
yeah, it's in vogue.
TikTok.
It takes really.
Yeah.
It was a recent thing. Oh man,
Well, like for me, because like over the past year and a half, I've been getting into TikTok and seeing like these teenagers just
sure,
like being obsessed with a bunch of like anime that like when I was a kid, you couldn't do that. When you like
that's true.
wearing like a t-shirt with like a like for example people wearing like Dragon Slayer kimonos and stuff like that, and people are being like, man, that's cool. And it's not just like the nerdy side of TikTok, it's like the popular people on TikTok are also like talking about anime.
Yeah,
And when I was a kid, it was like no one talks about that stuff. And if you did, which I did, because shocker, I like talking about it when people talk to me about it, um it was looked down upon.
mm-hmm,
It
mm-hmm.
was really odd because, like, for me, it just didn't make any sense because it's just like everyone watches like cartoons. Like, I know you guys watch cartoons. Like, why don't like try something different? Like, this is really cool and it has like a bunch of action in it. You guys like action movies. Why don't you watch Naruto or something like that or Dragon Ball Z? And it was just really odd to see that kind of shift recently
Sure,
where
sure.
people are like, yeah, we're totally into this. Like, what? Like, this is. I'm like, man, I grew. Like, obviously, it, being a teenager and like person in their early like teens and late teens, it's really difficult right now because obviously quarantine.
Yeah,
And I think that's also kind of helped with it
sure.
because people are just trying to find new content, and then they're like, wait, there's all this really cool content that I've never heard of or seen before, and there's a lot of action and it, like visually it looks amazing and the storytelling is really great as well. So I'm happy that this has changed, and I'm really like, obviously I'm not going to like sit here and gatekeep anime. Like, people do that all the time and it's disgusting. I think it's really good that people are getting into it. I think this is a great time for everyone to get into it because there's always an anime for everyone. Like, I tell that to everybody. There's an anime for you. Like, I know you say you don't like anime, but there's at least one. Like, you don't like action and you just like dramas. There's literally drama. Like, watch like your you lie in April and tell me that's not drama.
Sure.
Like, there's just so much stuff and genres that Western viewing has that is in anime, but I honestly enjoy it a little bit better because maybe because I like the artistic like animations and like
Sure.
the visuals. It's nice to see it in a different context. But I'm jealous. I'm not going to sit here and be like, "Oh, it was super easy. Everything was." No, I got bullied. So I was a 6'2" tomboy that enjoyed a bunch of things that girls usually didn't like, or at least talked about. I had a friend who did. Like, one of my best friends in middle school, the first day of orientation for middle school, she was dressed up like Jack Sparrow. Like,
Oh,
I thought that was
really?
so cool. Yeah, and she was like talking like him, and I'm like, man, this is so cool. And a bunch of girls were like, wow, that's such a dorky thing to do. And I'm like, what is your name? Like, you are my person, and we're going to be like best friends. And I was friends with her until I moved. And I still talk to her to every once in a while, but it's stuff like that that like nowadays people are like, like people literally do that stuff on TikTok all the time. There's a guy who has like over 10,000 followers on TikTok, and he dresses up like Willy Wonka, and it's not even
Yeah.
the original. It's
Yeah, I've seen him a
so
thousand times.
yeah. Now it's like embraced. At the time, absolutely not. But I'm happy it's embraced now. So
Yeah, I guess there's something for
yeah,
everybody, for sure.
yeah.
One of the other things I did want to touch on was specifically
Mhm.
because you mentioned it quite a bit and you're definitely passionate about it. And now that I've seen a little bit more of it, especially with the 8-bit version of what you can do, tell me about your interest in art. I mean, the fact that I think you're fantastic.
Thanks. Well, um, I started getting really into art when I was a kid. Mostly because, shocker, I was in animation, so I drew a lot. I also for a lot, technically, I always had issues reading, and I always had issues like consuming information that way. So having visuals was always something I was interested in. And so I used to draw all the time, and then I used to take classes all throughout school. And I also started as a camper at an arts camp to I became a camp counselor there, and just being able to do things that interest me but also being able to express myself through art was always entertaining. I will admit when I was younger I definitely drew like a lot of like anime inspired
Sure.
stuff, until I dealt with a art teacher who was really rude.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear this a lot, where art, like you'll have an art teacher. This was like an art mentor who told me like you won't get anywhere in art if you do anime. Like if you draw anime characters, you're never getting anywhere, and no one's ever going to accept you, and you need to like never draw that stuff again. So for a long time, I didn't. Shrug. Um, so I stopped for a while, but like recently, I've been getting into it a bit. Art. I've been kind of getting into that more like anime type like look, or like at least that kind of like genre.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part I've always enjoyed it. Like it's been just a way for me, like it's a stress reliever for one. It just lets me kind of like put on my headphones, listen to music or podcast, and just like cancel out everything else and just work on something. Though I will admit sometimes it's a little bit difficult for me to sit down and actually work on something because artist block.
Yeah.
But it's been something I've always been like really passionate about, and something I've been like trying to consistently work at. But for the most part, it's something I really want to put a focus on in this year. Like I know last year I did like I dabbled in it quite a lot last year, and I did commissions last year as well, until my tablet broke. Rest in peace.
No.
And so right now I'm in the process of buying one, but also my computer. But that's a whole other story. You know this. Hopefully, by the time this podcast has been released, I actually have bought a computer. I'm just gonna put that out into the universe. So, yeah, it's been a long journey of different genres between like drawing to sculpting. Oh God. I did jewelry work for like a small period. Never gonna do that again in my life. But
Was it so taxing?
um,
Like,
it's taxing. And one of the girls that was teaching me, it was like wired jewelry. So you
okay,
take like wire and with pliers, and then you bend it around like different stones and stuff like that, and you make like different designs.
sure.
Sure, that's how I feel about it. It's gorgeous. I like cannot like whoever does the stuff like that, all the power to you, just not my thing. But I always enjoyed it. I try different mediums. I don't like to stay in with like, oh, if you're using markers, you can only use markers. I'm typically that person that's like, okay, so I'm using markers. So I'm also using ink, color pencils, maybe a Sharpie, because
Mm.
I love using Sharpies for everything. And obviously digital art. So it's a way to just kind of do what I want. And it's just been a really good escape for certain things. So it's just been really nice to be able to do that. But yeah, it's always been something I've been interested in. So definitely animations helped with that. And then probably constantly being thrown into like different art classes and camps and seminars and stuff like that. It's just been always something I've been interested in.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Okay, Fee, I've
Yeah.
had you speak for 30 minutes straight. I feel bad. So for this, I'm going to give you an opportunity. I'm going to give you 3 questions that you can ask
Okay.
me. You can ask me anything.
Okay.
Okay? What would be your first question?
Hmm.
While you think about it, I'll vamp a little bit.
Okay.
I actually did a art class many years ago. It was part of a club. It was
Mm-hmm.
called, I believe, Club 37 here in Chicago. And I
Okay.
remember I actually really, really enjoyed it. I remember having like the sketchbook and everything and doing drawings. But I think what ended up making me, and part of me was like, oh, I want to do comic book stuff. So I'm trying to draw my own superhero characters. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember we had an opportunity to do a paper mache portion of the class, and I
Mm-hmm.
decided to recreate and bring to life this character I made, which was a mime that was just purple and black stripes. And I made a
Oh my god.
almost full body sized version of him out of paper mache. Photos, as
That is
far as I know,
insane.
don't exist anymore. And I made a felt hat. That was the coolest part.
What?
Yeah, but yeah, his name was Mr. Mime. He was a comic book character I created so long ago, and so if I was like, I don't even know how tall I was at the time. Let's just say I was like 5'5". He was probably about 4 or 5. Like he was getting up there, and
Oh my god.
I remember making this weird thing in comparison to like everybody else. It's like, why am I making this weird jester clown? I was really obsessed with like the Joker and shit as a kid, clearly. But yeah, the art, I dabbled in art, but as an actual artist, I cannot draw for the life of me. Graphic design is also roughly hard. I can do layouts, which you can see here, which is just a white void if you're looking at this at the screen. But when it comes to that, I'm always feel respect towards people that can do it and people that take the time and the patience and the line work and all that for sure. So for me, my visual medium is I have to do it with video and film. So
Yeah.
shout out to all the
That's a
artists out
type of
there.
art.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I vamped. Do you have a question for me? Anything, anything. It could be the Pantheon of Mario.
Okay. Let's start off. I kind of like to talk about like Mr. Mime.
Okay.
If you could make a comic book character right now, like if you were like given a here's a budget, here you need to create a movie with a comic book character that you've created. Give me a pitch.
That I've created, or could it be something that's already
Yeah.
existed? Only I created? Okay.
I mean, if it
No,
makes
that's
it
fair.
easier, you could.
No, no, because I always have an answer for that one, but I'll hold that one off because I like to keep that one. But
Okay.
the one I did when I was a kid, there was another
Mhm.
character that I really liked, and it was based
Okay.
off of like a personal like experience that happened in school in high school,
Yeah.
where to go into the story, and I'll tell this story probably later, but basically high school was in a neighborhood that was not welcoming to us because it was very much like we were invaders into their new place because it was a brand new school. And so all these kids from all over came over and they were not
Yeah.
very happy about that. And they retaliated in violence in a lot of ways. And
Okay.
in one instance, obviously, some students were actually thrown from buses, meaning that like they had, so we have a CTA system here, which is like a public transportation, and they have emergency windows that obviously, if you're ever in an accident, if the bus ever tips over, you can pull the latch and then just jump out of it.
Yeah.
Well, people would grab the kids and unlatch the thing and throw them into traffic.
Oh no.
It was bad. They were not necessarily into traffic because luckily a lot of the emergencies were on the sidewalk side, so
Yeah.
they were really getting thrown onto the sidewalk, which was better, but obviously it's still
Still
traffic.
bad, but still bad. Like
Thus to
better.
say, my inspiration obviously was like I was obviously getting fed up at the time, and really at the end of the day, it really is just a misunderstanding between the school and the
Of
neighborhood.
course.
But ultimately, I was like, oh, criminals are doing this. But there was a character I created, and it was called the Heart, and it was all. And again, this is during a time when I was listening to a lot of emo and sad music, so of course I named a character the Heart. But basically, he was very much a Daredevil-esque person who, he didn't necessarily have a power per se, but he was sort of like a brawler type, and he would always just like whenever he sees something terrible happen, like in a public transportation or obviously in the streets of some sort, he had a hoodie that he would zip up, and in the hoodie obviously had this like heart design. And he would put that on, and then he would throw it over his face, and then of course he would, do the business to the bad people. But I always remember like always wanting to do that as sort of like this high school drama that this kid has to take it upon himself to help the people in his neighborhood, even though it's not his, or he's like a stranger in his neighborhood or something like that. So I mean, that was probably something growing up I would want to do. I've since had better ideas. But that was something I remember as a kid. I was like, oh, I'd love to do this as a comic book. And I remember drawing like 4 or 5 pages and never making it to like a full issue, but like 4 or 5 pages of like dude kicks man out of a window, like stuff like cool stuff like that as a dumb goofball kid. Because it's funny because in high school, after around this time actually, I did join the comic book club. And the comic book club was really just hey, these 2 white people came into our school and they want us to collaborate and make this sort of like PSA comic book. And the PSA comic book ended up being like the retelling of these incidents of all the stuff happening in the neighborhood and how we came together to fix it. Which actually, happy ending to that story, that there was a happy ending where the neighborhood finally... there was some community outreach that happened and things were better. But not because of this comic book. But it was very much like, oh, this is our first time being like sort of like creative about it. And I had like a writing credit on it. So I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I don't know. I have to see if I still have a copy somewhere. But I remember my friends doing the art and me doing sort of the story outlining of it. So that was fun. But yeah,
that's awesome.
That would be my comic book thing that I created when I was a kid.
That's really cool.
All right.
No, like honestly, like I always like when it comes to comic books and stuff like that, I've always thought they're really cool. Just because the amount of like thought and like effort you need to put in them. Like that's actually something I've been like thinking about is doing like a webcomic, but it's one of those things where you have to come up with an idea, which that's a little difficult.
No, for sure.
But it's always been something that I've like always been intrigued with. Actually, one of my art mentors worked on the Adventure Time comic.
Oh, very cool.
And he did some covers for them as well. And he worked on Steven Universe for a little bit, but just being able to see stuff like that and being able to like recognize like the process in making a comic is honestly, that's super cool.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's really I would probably have been like the kid that is like, this is great, but oh god, I'm just oh, younger me. Yeah, no, I think that stuff is really cool. Let me think of a second question.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
You
know what?
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Now, this is going to be an interesting question because I know we've talked about we've talked in like the Discord mostly like with you and Frank talking about the fact that obviously, shocker, you guys are like, would the proper term be Latino or would it be Mexican, which would be the optimum?
I guess. Latino is fine. I guess that's sort of like the idea. It's like Hispanic, where it's sort of like a conglomeration of
oh my god, Hispanic, that's the word. Oh my god, it's literally 213. What is words?
That's fine. And to be honest, I can never get it straight all the time. But Hispanic essentially is like the conglomeration of like all of the races. Because to be fair, in Mexico and then going into South America, there's just so many. There's Chile, there's Portugal. There's so many. So for sure, I would say that me and Frank would probably. I think Frank specifically is just Mexican.
Okay.
Which I believe just means that his family or relatives are from Mexico. For me, I am Mexican and Puerto Rican. Oh,
cool.
And I learned a little bit about it because I wanted to know more stuff during when I was on Kind of Funny because I didn't know if I was going to get asked about it. Having to prove my Hispanicness. But learning that, some of the relatives from the Mexican side were all sort of like near the Rio Grande area in Texas.
Okay.
So it's sort of like the crossing over there. So that's where we sort of get up the Mexican side, and then some of the Puerto Rican side I obviously get from my father as well. That very much is just it's just something that came from, I believe, from his father. So I think the grandmother Mexico, father Puerto Rican, met somewhere down the middle, and then they went up to Chicago. So that's pretty much where that stands from. And generally, the question was just that what we're Latinos. Is that the question?
No, it's like kind of like growing up in that kind of, because like for me, like shocker, I'm whiter than white.
Sure. I
I
can't. Can you tell?
um
It's still white. It's still pretty pale.
yes, no, if I turn this up just like one more, like just a little bit more polite, like it would just be like you talking to like a white sheet. And I can say this because I am paler than pale, guys.
Sure.
No, I personally grew up in a Scottish, I like a you know what, I grew up in a United Protestant Scottish Irish household.
Okay.
So I, one, grew up in a religious household. Two, Scottish and Irish. Shocker. My last name is Mackinnon, and my first name is Fiona. And if you talk to anyone from those areas, you know my name is hella like Scottish. Like someone said my name was very Irish. Someone who is Irish said it was an Irish name. I've always been taught it's a Scottish name, mostly because my grandfather is like his entire family's Scottish, but my grandmother was Irish, and that's why I got this combination. But how is it like kind of growing up in a Hispanic household? Because I know I don't think either one of you speaks Spanish. So
No.
like how much of that sort of influence did you have when you were growing up?
So, and to be honest, I mean, so this is where it gets interesting, is because, long story short, I theoretically did not grow up in a Spanish household, and this is why.
Okay.
The reason is because my father and his entire family, the way that it was structured. So he has a relative of like, I don't know the exact number, but I'm gonna say 12 siblings. Okay, a bunch of them
Okay.
actually came from Puerto Rico, if I'm not mistaken. My dad went to Puerto Rico, and then his father brought some of those kids that he also had in Puerto Rico and brought them to Chicago, and
Okay.
they had all these kids, and then he just left. He booked it. He straight up booked it. We don't know if he's still alive or not. I've never met the man, so we know nothing of him. That obviously was a huge burden. And then on my grandmother, who decided to go crazy, and she just left. Okay? Whole story. But basically, end up in the foster care system. So with that, that means that they broke up into many pieces. Many pieces.
Yeah.
Like the Infinity Stones, they're out there in the universe. And so basically, the reason why I'm not so much in a Spanish household is because, well, my father, he knows some Spanish, but he can't. He can basically keep up with most people, but at the same time, he has trouble himself, and that's because of this situation. And so when he was with my mother, my mother is Italian, so half my family is Italian, Lithuanian, the other half is Mexican, Puerto Rican. He was also always working, and then just like my mother, so that's why I spent more time with my grandmother. That basically, and then I believe I was like 4 or 5, and that's when my parents divorced. So that was also part of it, why I don't have that lineage there. A lot of it's like outside forces that were beyond my control. So growing up, when you have this sort of a complex of like, oh, yeah, I'm Hispanic, but I just don't have the reverence for it. Or where is it going? And it wasn't until like, and this is gonna sound silly, but it wasn't until like I saw the movie Coco, when the reveal of the fact that the name of the family is Rivera, and I saw it on the wall, and I started crying uncontrollably because I immediately connected with the movie without having a true connection to it, which is strange. But yes, ultimately, wanting to be connected in that way is something I've always wanted to. But yeah, it's interesting, and one day I will do this documentary on what happened to my family, because it is fairly interesting, and I would love to see. And there's people that are no longer among us for certain gang related reasons because they sprouted out into gang stuff, and then I have people that went to white families and their whole identity is not even similar to mine, where it's sort of like they went to a whole white family and their name is, instead of it being, I don't even remember what his original name was, but let's just say John Rivera, his now name is like John Williamson, like something totally different. But it is fascinating to me. And it's always something that I'm still looking to find out. And then for Frank, like obviously I haven't asked him about his history, but
Yeah.
I'm very curious of like where his departure goes from that too, because I've been with him in like Thanksgiving, and like yeah, it's very very English focused. I haven't really hear much Spanish from them, other than his mom calls him Bo, and I love it. I love it every time it happens because he hates it. He hates it when it happens in front of me. So if you call him Bo, I just want to let you know that's what I want to see how he responds to that. Sorry, Frank.
I didn't know this. Oh man. Oh Frank. Oh, you are in for
You
it,
should
my
change
friend.
his name in the
And
Discord to Bo just to see what happens. It's like BOE, I think. I don't know. That'd be funny. But yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
that's my mini history, my fast version of why I'm not that Hispanic. I am Hispanic, but I'm not that Hispanic. I love Hispanic food.
Yeah.
Burritos are the best. I've been making burrito Mexican breakfast burritos like every day the last week just because I love salsa. But you know.
Other than the fact that I know that you apparently don't know how to eat tamales correctly.
Oh yeah, see, you gotta blame my dad. You gotta blame my dad for not teaching me.
Wow. Okay, Mr. Rivera. There is a no, because I always thought like it's always cool to see like how different like people like their households are.
Sure.
Because obviously for me, I thought it was normal to live with my grandparents and my mom barely being around for the most part. I thought that was normal.
Sure.
So yeah.
And you're like, oh no, this is a different case. People all have different ways of growing up. So yeah, I don't know. I get afraid about that sometimes. I'm always we're like, obviously I used to have a thing about my my mother and my father's divorce where I was like, oh, that sounds terrible, and I went to counseling for that. And even like within the last like 10 years, I was, especially my last relationship, where I was just like, I want to make sure that this is the right one, because I don't want to go through what they did, and I don't want to, have a kid and have him go through the same things I did. So, I'm kind of over it now. Where like, if I got divorced, I got divorced. It was a mistake that we all make. I'm sort of like past that point, but at the same time, I still have those reservations, those fears.
Yeah, I understand. I like, obviously throughout this podcast I've talked about my mom and my grandparents. I never talk about my dad, mostly because, shocker, my dad's not in my picture at all. He technically were considered the second family, or the other family, because he was separated from his wife at the time, and he has children that are old enough to be my parents. Because my dad is, oh God, math. How does math work? He is 74.
Okay.
So yeah, my dad's relatively old. My mom's older too. But yeah, the last time I talked to him was 2017. He was in the Dominican Republic and had been there for 6 months.
Got it. So your dad's got a tan.
Yeah. I guess he looks like Dr. Phil. At some point I need to get photos because he totally looks like Dr. Phil. And yeah, side fun story. When I was 10 years old, on my way to get surgery, I told him I never wanted to speak to him again, which was great. On the phone, because mostly because we'd always oh God. And my mom she mentioned this a while ago to me, that he would talk to me, ask me about how the weather was and how school was, and then I would pass the phone over to my sister, and then I would hear him ask her about the weather and how her school was as well, and ask the same questions, like he was reading it off a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And I told him that if he didn't care about me, I don't want to talk to him anymore. So yeah, dads are sounds like you have a better relationship with your dad. I do, but yeah, no, family dynamics are really weird, and so I always like to kind of, I know it's obviously a mood insensitive point for a lot of people, so I just always like to kind of see behind the curtain and kind of get into this, because you know what, I don't know this about you. This is gonna be my last question. Do you have siblings, Mario?
I do, and honestly, it was a part of a question I was going to ask you. So, but yeah. So, for instance, so my dad has I'm his first child, so it's Mario. It's a man.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have my sister Melissa,
Mm-hmm.
who lived with me for many years. Obviously, with my mother, she's part of that set. He then
Of course.
divorced my mother because of his infidelity, which
Yeah.
of course produced a kid named Christina, who I adore. But she was kind of out of my life for
Mm-hmm.
the entirety of hers for the most part.
Yeah.
And we reconnected not that long ago, which was really great. However, there are still days where I feel like I'm still not doing enough, and I know I'm not doing enough to continue that, especially without that
Mm-hmm.
huge gap of time. I know my sister does a better job with reconnecting with Christina. And then I have a fourth one who I believe is now turning 17, 18, but I don't have a relationship with that specifically because I also, so at least with Christina, I knew she existed, but I knew that she was sort of taken away. And from what I learned, it was stuff to deal with my dad and her mother, not necessarily that her mother was trying to keep her away.
Yeah.
And we have now a better relationship than we've ever had, I would say.
Nice.
So that's good. But the fourth one was someone that we were totally shocked by because during this period of time, my dad had remarried for about 10 years. And then there was a
Mm-hmm.
kid that was produced in the middle of it. So he did it again, basically. And I'm
Oh.
like, in terms of like the woman he was married with they didn't have a child, but there was a kid
Yeah.
that all of a sudden appeared out of nowhere, and then they broke up, obviously, and
Yeah.
then now I have this other sister that I sort of don't know at all. I've met her only like once or twice. I can't really
Yeah.
pinpoint it. I know that she sort of lives with my dad right now, but he lives a little further away from me, so it's not like I can go see him. But yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I want to maybe. It's just that at this point, it just, I don't know. It's so bizarre. And part of my question was obviously I wanted to ask you, since you said that, you told your story about your dad and his other family. Do you connect to those two at all? Like, are there any connection whatsoever with the two siblings?
Well, there's actually three.
Three.
There was
Okay.
twins. There were fraternal twins. One
Sure.
was a girl, one was a guy, and then there was another sister, like half sister that I have. Apparently, one of them went to Juilliard. Congrats to you, whoever it
Hey,
was.
good for you.
Yeah.
And that person, I
Don't know them.
was
I
like
don't know.
random
Like, I
celebrity.
honestly don't know any of them. I know that my grandmother doesn't acknowledge my existence. So,
Ah,
yeah. Apparently she's still alive. So, congrats on being like 90 something. That kind of
you're
gives me some hope.
yeah, survived Corona times.
But because my grandparents lived until their 80s, and apparently my other, like, my paternal grandmother
Yeah.
is like 90
We
something.
put
So
enough of these
congrats.
vaccines in us. We could live to 100 and something. I'm excited.
Woo!
Yeah, let's do it.
It's definitely weird. It's always something I've thought about. Like, I'd always been interested in it. But it got to like a weird point where like I always saw my grandfather as my father figure. So when I was 10, I kind of just made a decision for myself, mostly probably because of nerves, and I was just really tired. And I got really upset because I asked him to, like, when I was a kid, I asked him to come see me before I went to the hospital because I was really scared. And he's like, I can't. And I'm not, like, he said, but I'll try. And then it was like we were driving an hour to this hospital that I had to go to, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm apparently 10-year-old Fiona had hella confidence. Like, congrats to her. Like, good job, 10-year-old me. It was such a weird thing. He'd ask about me every so often, and then I reached out to him in 2017, just to see how he was. But I never really had a connection with the other siblings.
Sure.
But I'm probably an aunt. I've probably been an aunt since I was like 4. I don't know. But it's always been really weird. And I know, like, when my grandfather passed away, it was like my dad died. Like, that's my correlation, is like my dad died in 2009. Like, the guy who gave me like life
Sure.
is not in my picture though. So it's definitely weird. But I also understand huge families. My grandmother had 12 brothers and sisters. So I have like tons of cousins on my grandmother's side. Don't know anybody on my dad's side though. Like, you know what? I'm probably gonna message him and see. I'm just gonna DM it, like message say like, hope you haven't died due to COVID. If you have, rest in peace.
How's the
But if you
Dominican
haven't,
Republic?
how's the Dominican? Are you stuck there? Like, are you still like? Are you in a foreign country? Like,
Yeah.
you were kind of dumb. Like, you knew COVID was coming and you decided to stay there. That's on you. But it's a weird situation. Like, it's overall, like, when I was a kid, I didn't think it was weird. Like, every so often I think about it, and I'm like, we're like the other family. Like, when you hear, like, there's the other family, I'm like, that's literally me. I'm like, hi, I'm Fiona. I was not planned. I'm 6'2" because my dad's 6'4", and that's pretty much all I got from him, or whatever other medical things I might have. You know what?
Yeah,
I should do like a 23andMe and then like see if one of them has done it, because then
sure.
they could be like, "Whoa, I have this other sibling," and I'm like, because my dad probably didn't tell you about me. Hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had that vibe. It's weird.
No,
It's a weird
I
kid.
understand that for sure. Because there was a period of time where I was afraid to date any Hispanic girls because I was afraid that I was eventually going to bump into my sister again. You know, it was so scary for a stupid amount of time.
That happens like there in Nova Scotia. There's an island off of Nova Scotia called Cape Breton. Cape Breton.
Sure.
It's Cape Breton. Like, it's all combined for Nova Scotians. But that's where his original family was from. He technically was adopted per se, because he grew up with one family and then his dad died and his mom was getting sick, so his neighbor took him in, but
It's a good neighbor.
his family's like related to a bunch of okay, need to explain this. My mom's last name is Mackinnon.
Sure.
His last name is McDonald, but his original family was MC K McKinnon, not connected whatsoever because he's from New Brunswick. Like, no, my grandfather and my mom like was from the New Brunswick area. My dad is from Cape Breton area.
Gotcha.
No connection. But yeah, it was weird because I'm like, I'm never going to Cape Breton. And when I did, people are like, oh, you have a McKinnon last name. Are you? I'm like, nope. Bye. Like, I'm not related to anybody here. And if I was, I don't know. But I'm not connecting with anybody.
No, for sure.
Yeah. I always hear weird things about it. Yeah.
No. All right. Well, I don't want to take any more of your time. It is late, technically. It is 12 o'clock my time. It is what, 2 o'clock your time?
It's 2:32.
2:32. Okay. And I think we did. I think we covered a lot of ground here. And then obviously, if there's anything that we missed, we can always come back and do this again.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for being the first kind of official guest for Point in Conversation. So thank you so much, Fiona.
You're welcome.
Where can people find you on the net?
Okay, well, you can find me at my regular tag, Azranix, Z for Canadians, but ZURANIIX, on Twitch, where I stream, but I haven't this week because crazy. And then I'm on Twitter all the time. And I guess by this point, there's Point in Progress. So I'm in a group called Point in Progress. We talk about video games, video games, movies, television, anything that we're currently like watching and consuming, but also relating everything to kind of like accessibility in the platforms, which is movies, TV, and in gaming. My goodness, I apologize in advance.
That's fine.
My explanation.
We haven't knocked this down yet. We're not fully worn yet, so I understand.
But yeah, we have all the stuff. It's going to be great. I'm really excited. I get to sit down and talk with my friends each and every week about news and just video games and everything that we're doing. And they have to listen to me talk about my current addiction, which is trying to catch up on all the anime shows that I haven't watched. So rest in peace. Also, I think by this point, we're still probably doing this. I am on a weekly Attack on Titan podcast where we talk about Attack on Titan, the final season. It's been absolutely nuts. By this point, we just recorded season 4, episode 7 tonight. But by the time this is probably released, we'll probably be on like 14 or 15.
Sure.
Who knows? So yeah, definitely check it out. It's a lot of fun. You get to hear me rambling about the show with some great people in the community over at the Ultimate Conquest on YouTube and everywhere else. But yeah, definitely check it out if you like Attack on Titan. If you haven't watched Attack on Titan, don't recommend it because you probably won't understand anything we're talking about, but you're welcome to join in and listen.
No, for sure. And you pop in on some of this other stuff that Ruben does over there at Penultimate Conquest. So for sure, definitely check that out. And yes, please follow Zeranix on Twitch, because she is fun and I'm there sometimes too, and everybody else. So it's a lot of good times. We have debates about Selena and her relevance. That was stupid. I don't know why we did that. But of course, you can find.
Frank tells me.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Continue.
No, it's okay. Yeah. You can find me at Rivera on Twitter. You can find, obviously, me at Point in Progress on the podcasts that we will hopefully be launching very, very, very soon or after this. And then, of course, you can find me in most of my work at youtube.com/DualShockers. Again, this is Point in Conversation, and maybe I'll have a conversation with you. Take care.